The numbers are in, and they're catastrophic for Keir Starmer. Fresh polling shows that half of British voters now want the Prime Minister replaced. Read that again. Half the country wants him gone after less than a year in office. This isn't just poor polling. This is a complete collapse in public confidence at a speed rarely seen in modern British politics. For a man who won a landslide election just months ago, this represents an unprecedented implosion. Today, we're examining how Starmer went from election victor to national embarrassment in record time, and whether he can possibly survive this political death spiral. Let's look at exactly how bad these numbers are. Polling shows that approximately 50% of voters believe Keir Starmer should be replaced as Prime Minister. Think about what that means. This isn't disapproval of specific policies. This isn't disagreement with his approach. This is half the country saying he's fundamentally unsuitable for the job and needs to go. His net approval rating has crashed into deeply negative territory. In some polls, he's now less popular than Rishi Sunak was before the last election, and Sunak led the Conservatives to their worst defeat in history. Starmer's ratings have fallen faster than almost any prime minister in modern polling history. Even among Labour voters, support is cratering. The people who voted for him just months ago are experiencing severe buyer's remorse. To put this in context, most prime ministers enjoy a honeymoon period after taking office. Even those who eventually become unpopular usually get at least 6 months to a year of relative public goodwill. Starmer's honeymoon lasted approximately 3 weeks. By autumn 2024, the polling was already turning negative. Now it's an absolute disaster. What makes this particularly remarkable is that he inherited a country desperate for change and an opposition in complete disarray. He had every advantage a new prime minister could ask for, and he's managed to squander it all in record time. So what's driven this unprecedented collapse in popularity? It's not one single scandal or policy failure. It's a perfect storm of incompetence, dishonesty, and disconnection from ordinary people's concerns. The freebies scandal was the first major blow. Here was a man who'd campaigned on integrity and restoring trust in politics, caught accepting over £100,000 worth of gifts, designer suits, expensive glasses, luxury hospitality, clothes for his wife, all while cutting winter fuel payments for pensioners. The optics were absolutely toxic and the hypocrisy was staggering. People saw a prime minister who preached one thing and practiced another. Then came Rachel Reeves' budget, a disaster that managed to alienate almost everyone. Businesses were hit with job-killing tax increases, working people saw their wage growth prospects damaged, pensioners faced benefit cuts, and all of this came after explicit promises during the election that taxes on working people wouldn't rise. The broken promises were blatant and undeniable. Immigration has continued unchecked despite tough rhetoric. The Rwanda scheme was scrapped with no credible alternative in place. Channel crossings continue. People voted for change and control. They're getting neither. The NHS, supposedly Labour's top priority, remains in crisis. Waiting lists continue to grow, A&E departments are overwhelmed, GP appointments are impossible to get. Where's the improvement? Where's the plan? And underlying all of this is a sense that Starmer simply doesn't understand or care about ordinary people's lives. He seems more concerned with international virtue signaling than domestic priorities, more interested in abstract principles than concrete problems, more focused on his image than actual governance. These poll numbers aren't just embarrassing, they have real political consequences. Labour MPs are getting nervous. They're hearing from constituents who regret voting Labour. They're seeing the polling in their own constituencies turning toxic, and they're starting to worry about their own seats. In normal circumstances, a government with a massive majority can weather poor polling, but these aren't normal circumstances. The majority was built on sand. Labour's vote share wasn't particularly high. They won because Conservative voters stayed home or switched to Reform. That coalition is already fracturing. By-elections are going to be brutal. Any seat that comes up will become a referendum on Starmer's leadership, and losses in supposedly safe Labour seats could trigger panic within the parliamentary party. We've seen this pattern before: a wounded leader, nervous MPs, whispered conversations about whether a change is needed. The opposition parties are emboldened. The Conservatives, despite their own problems, are closing the polling gap faster than anyone expected. Reform UK is eating into Labour's traditional working-class vote. The Liberal Democrats are positioning themselves as the sensible centrist alternative. Starmer is losing voters in every direction. And internationally, Britain's standing is being damaged. How can other countries take the UK seriously when our Prime Minister is this unpopular this quickly? How can we negotiate effectively when everyone knows our leader is politically weak? Starmer's personal crisis is becoming a national crisis. The question now is whether Starmer can survive. Technically, yes, he has a massive parliamentary majority, and there's no formal mechanism to remove him easily. Labour's leadership rules make challenges difficult. He could theoretically limp on for years, even with abysmal polling. But politically, this is unsustainable. No prime minister can govern effectively when half the country wants them gone. Every policy announcement is undermined by personal unpopularity. Every media appearance reinforces negative perceptions. Every day in office does more damage to the Labour brand. History suggests that prime ministers rarely recover from this level of unpopularity. Once the public has made up their mind that a leader is unsuitable, changing that perception is nearly impossible. Theresa May couldn't do it, Gordon Brown couldn't do it, Liz Truss certainly couldn't do it. Why would Starmer be different? The smart money says he won't make it to the next election, whether through a formal leadership challenge, a negotiated resignation, or electoral humiliation that forces him out. Starmer's days as prime minister are numbered. The polling numbers we're seeing now are often the beginning of the end, not a temporary blip that can be overcome. What could save him? A major crisis where he rises to the occasion, a dramatic policy success that changes public perception, an opposition implosion that makes him look better by comparison. But none of these seem likely. More probable is that things continue to deteriorate until the situation becomes untenable. Beyond the political drama, this matters enormously for the country. Britain faces serious challenges: economic stagnation, public service crises, international tensions. We need strong, effective leadership. Instead, we have a lame duck prime minister focused on political survival. Policy becomes timid when a leader is this weak. Difficult but necessary decisions get postponed. Long-term planning is abandoned in favor of short-term political management. The government becomes paralyzed, unable to act decisively because every action might trigger more backlash. And the political instability itself is damaging. Business investment requires confidence and predictability. International partnerships require reliable commitments. Public services require sustained focus and resources. All of this becomes harder when the government is consumed by internal crisis. The tragedy is that Britain voted for stability and competence. We were promised an end to chaos, a return to serious government, a focus on the issues that matter. Instead, we've got a different kind of chaos, not the carnival of Boris Johnson or the brief disaster of Liz Truss, but the slow-motion car crash of a leader completely out of his depth. Half of British voters want Keir Starmer replaced. That's not just bad polling, it's a verdict on his fitness to lead. He's failed the most basic test of democratic leadership, maintaining public confidence. The only question now is how long this painful decline continues before the inevitable end. Britain deserves better than a prime minister the country has already given up on, and sooner or later, one way or another, we'll get it.